before takeoff. According to Richard Graham, a former SR-71 pilot, the navigation system was good enough to limit drift to 1,000 foot, 300 m, of the direction of travel at Mach 3.73, sensors and payloads. The SR-71 originally included optical forward/infrared imagery systems, side-looking airborne radar, SLO, winking SAD 74, electronic intelligence, ELINT, gathering systems winking SAD 75, defensive systems for countering missile and airborne fighters winking SAD 76, 77, 78, 79, and recorders for SLO, ELINT, and maintenance data. The SR-71 carried a fair-kill tracking camera and an infrared camera, 80, both of which ran during the entire mission. The SR-71 defensive system base. The SR-71 had a second cockpit behind the pilot for the RSO. It could not carry the A-12's principal sensor, a single large focal length optical camera that sat in the Q bay behind the A-12 single cockpit. Instead, the SR-71's camera systems could be located either in the fuselage chines or the removable nose forward/chine section. Wide area imaging was provided by two of ITEC's operational objective cameras, which provided stereo imagery across the width of the flight track, or an ITEC optical bar camera which gave continuous horizon-to-horizon coverage. A closer view of the target area was given by the High-Con Technical Objective Camera, TOC, which could be directed up to 45 degrees left or right off centerline. 81. Initially, the TOCs could not match the resolution of the A-12's larger camera, but rapid improvements in both the camera and film improved this performance. 81, 82, SLO, built by Goodyear Aerospace, could be carried in the removable nose. In later life, the radar was replaced by L'Oreal's Advanced Synthetic Aperture Radar System, ASARS-1. Both the first SLO and ASARS-1 were ground mapping imaging systems, collecting data either in fixed swaths left or right off centerline or from a spot location for high resolution. 81. ELINT gathering systems, called the Electromagnetic Reconnaissance System, built by AIL, could be carried in the chine bays to analyze electronic signal fields being passed through, and were programmed to identify items of interest. 81, 83. Over its operational life, the Blackbird carried various electronic countermeasures, ECMs, including warning and active electronic systems built by several ECM companies and called systems A2, A2C, BC, C2, E, G, H, and M. On a given mission, an aircraft carried several of these frequency forward/purpose payloads to meet the expected threats. Major Jerry Crew, an RSO, told Air and Space Forward/Smithsonian that he used AJAMA to try to confuse surface-to-air missile sites as their crews tracked his airplane, but once his threat warning receiver told him a missile had been launched, he switched off the jammer to prevent the missile from homing in on its signal. 84. After landing, information from the SLO, ELINT gathering systems, and the maintenance data recorder were subjected to post-flight ground analysis. In the later years of its operational life, a data link system could send ASARS-1 and ELINT data from about 2,000 mi, 3,700 kilometers, of track coverage to a suitably equipped ground station. Life support. SR-71 pilot in full flight suit flying at 80,000 feet, 24,000 m, meant that crews could not use the standard masks, which could not provide enough oxygen above 43,000 foot, 13,000 m. Specialized protective pressurized suits were reproduced for crew members by the David Clark Company for the A-12, YF-12, M21 and SR-71. Furthermore, an emergency ejection at Mach 3.2 would subject crews to temperatures of about 450 degrees F, 230 degrees Celsius. Thus, During a high-altitude ejection scenario, an onboard oxygen supply would keep the suit pressurized during the descent. 85. The cockpit could be pressurized to an altitude of 10,000 or 26,000 feet, 3,000 or 8,000 m, during flight. 86. The cabin needed a heavy-duty cooling system, as cruising at Mach 3.2 would heat the aircraft's external surface well beyond 500 degrees Fahrenheit, 260 degrees Celsius, 87, and the inside of the windshield to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, 120 degrees Celsius. An air conditioner used a heat exchanger to dump heat from the cockpit into the fuel prior to combustion. 88. The same air conditioning system was also used to keep the front, nose, landing gear bay cool, thereby eliminating the need for the special aluminum impregnated tires similar to those used on the main landing gear. 89. The crew of a NASA Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird standing by the aircraft in their pressurized flight suits. 1991 Blackbird pilots and RSOs were provided with food and drink for long reconnaissance flights. Water bottles had long straws which crew members guided into an opening in the helmet by looking in a mirror. Food was contained in sealed containers similar to toothpaste tubes which delivered food to the crew members through the helmet opening. 90. 40. Operational history. Main era. The first flight of an SR-71 took place on the 22nd of December, 1964, at USAF Plant 42 in Palmdale, California, piloted by Bob Gilliland. 91. 92. The SR-71 reached a top speed of Mach 3.4 during flight testing. 93. 94, with pilot Major Brian Shaw reporting a speed in excess of Mach 3.5 on an operational sortie while evading a missile over Libya. 95. The first SR-71 to enter service was delivered to the 4200th, later, 9th, Strategic Reconnaissance Wing at Beale Air Force Base, California, in January 1966. 96. SR-71's first arrived at the 9th SRW's operating location, OL-8, at Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, Japan on 8 March 1968. 97. These deployments were code-named Glowing Heat, while the program as a whole was code-named Senior Crown. Reconnaissance missions over North Vietnam were code-named Black Shield and then renamed Giant Scale in late 1968. 98. On the 21st of March 1968, Major, later General, Jerome F. O'Malley and Major Edward D. Payne flew the first operational SR-71 sortie in SR-71 serial number 61 to 7976 from Kadena AFB, Okinawa. 97. During its career, this aircraft, 976, accumulated 2,981 flying hours and flew 942 total sorties, more than any other SR-71, including 257 operational missions, from Beale AFB, Palmdale, California, Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, Japan, and RAF Mildenhall, UK. The aircraft was flown to the National Museum of the United States Air Force near Dayton, Ohio in March 1990. The USAF could fly each SR-71, on average, once per week, because of the extended turnaround required after mission recovery. Very often an aircraft would return with rivets missing, delaminated panels or other broken parts such as inlets requiring repair or replacement. There were cases of the aircraft not being ready to fly again for a month due to the repairs needed. Rob Vermeland, Lockheed Martin's manager of Advanced Development Program, said in an interview in 2015 that high-tempo operations were not realistic for the SR-71. If we had one sitting in the hangar here and the crew chief was told there was a mission planned right now, then 19 hours later it would be safely ready to take off. 99. From the beginning of the Blackbird's reconnaissance missions over North Vietnam and Laos in 1968, the SR-71S averaged approximately one sortie a week for nearly 2 years. By 1970, the SR-71S were averaging 2 sorties per week, and by 1972, they were flying nearly 1 sortie every day. 2 SR-71s were lost during these missions, one in 1970 and the second aircraft in 1972, both due to mechanical malfunctions. 100, 101. Over the course of its reconnaissance missions during the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese fired approximately 800 SAMs at SR-71S, none of which managed to score a hit. 102. Pilots did report that missiles launched without radar guidance and no launch detection had passed as close as 150 yards, 140 m, from the aircraft. 103. While deployed at Okinawa, the SR-71S and their aircrew members gained the nickname Hapu, as did the A-12S preceding them, after a pit viper indigenous to Japan, which the Okinawans thought the plane assembled. 8. Early Project Hapu logo operational highlights for the entire Blackbird family, YF-12, A-12, and SR-71, as of about 1990 included SAD Smiley 104, 3,551 mission sorties flown, 17,300 total sorties flown, 11,008 mission flight hours, 53,490 total flight hours, 2,752 hours Mach 3 time, missions, 11,675 hours Mach 3 time, total. Only one crew member, Chimswaya, a Lockheed flight test reconnaissance and navigation systems specialist, was killed in a flight accident. 85. The restaff the crew members ejected safely or evacuated their aircraft on the ground. An SR-71 was used domestically in 1971 to assist the FBI in their manhunt for the skyjacker D.B. Cooper. The Blackbird was to retrace and photograph the flight path of the hijacked 727 from Seattle to Reno and attempt to locate any of items that Cooper was known to have parachuted with from the aircraft. 105. 5 flights were attempted, but on each occasion no photographs of the flight path were obtained due to low visibility. 106. European flights. European operations were from RAF Mildenhall, England. There were 2 routes. One was along the Norwegian west coast and up the Kola Peninsula, which contained several large naval bases belonging to the Soviet Navy's Northern Fleet. Over the years, there were several emergency landings in Norway, 4 in Bod and 2 of them in 1981, flying from Biel, and 1985. Rescue parties were sent in to repair the planes before leaving. On one occasion, one complete wing with engine was replaced as the easiest way to get the plane airborne again. 107, 108. The other route, from Mildenhall over the Baltic Sea, was known as Baltic Express. Swedish Air Force fighter pilots have managed to lock their radar on an SR-71 on multiple occasions within shooting range. 109, 110. Target illumination was maintained by feeding target location from ground-based radars to the fire control computer in the JA-37 Viggen interceptor. 111. The most common site for lock-on was the thin stretch of international airspace between Åland and Gotland that the SR-71s used on their return flights. 112, 113, 114. On the 29th of June, 1987, an SR-71 was on a mission around the Baltic Sea to spy on Soviet postings when one-off engines exploded. The aircraft, which was at 20 kilometers altitude, quickly lost altitude and turned 180 degrees to V-lift and turned over Gotland to search for the Swedish coast. Thus, Swedish airspace was violated, whereupon two unarmed, 115, Saab JA-37 Viggens on an exercise at the height of Vastavik were ordered. The mission was to do an incident preparedness check and identify an aircraft of high interest. It was found that the plane was in obvious distress, and a decision was made that the Swedish Air Force will escort the plane out of the Baltic Sea. A second round of armed JA-37s from Ängelholm replaced the first pair and completed the escort to Danish airspace. The event had been classified for over 30 years, and when the report was unsealed, data from the NSA showed that multiple MiG-25s with the order to shoot down the SR-71 or force it to land, had started right after the engine failure. A MiG-25 had locked a missile in the damaged SR-71, but as the aircraft was under escort, no missiles were fired. On the 29th of November 2018, the 4 Swedish pilots involved were awarded medals from the USAF. 116, 117, initial retirement. One widely conventional view, and probably the best-known view, of the reasons for the SR-71's retirement in 1989, a view that the Air Force itself offered to the Congress, was that besides being very expensive, the SR-71 had become redundant anyway, among other reconnaissance methods that were ever evolving. However, another view held by various officers and legislators is that the SR-71 program was terminated owing to Pentagon politics, and not because the aircraft had become obsolete, irrelevant, too hard to maintain, or unsustainably expensive. Graham, a former 1st SRS and 9th SRW commander, presented in 1996 what he viewed as a factual summary, not an opinion, of how the SR-71 provided some intelligence capabilities that none of its alternatives, such as satellites, U-2s, and UAVs, were providing in the 1990s, when the SR-71 was retired and then re-retired from Air Force reconnaissance duty. 26, 205, 217. The chief question for opinion, beyond that point, was only how crucial, or disposable those unique advantages properly were. Graham noted that in the 1970s and early 1980s, SR-71 squadron and wing commanders were often promoted into higher positions as general officers within the USAF structure and the Pentagon. In order to be selected into the SR-71 program in the first place, a pilot or navigator, RSO, had to be a top-quality USAF officer, so continuing career progression for members of this elite group was not surprising. These generals were adept at communicating the value of the SR-71 to a USAF command staff, and a Congress who often lacked a basic understanding of how the SR-71 worked and what it did. However, by the mid-1980s, these SR-71 generals all had retired, and a new generation of USAF generals mostly wanted to cut a program's budget and spend its funding on different priorities, such as the very expensive new B-2 Spirit strategic bomber program. Such generals had an interest in believing, and persuading the services and Congress, that the SR-71 had become either entirely or almost entirely redundant to satellites, U-2s incipient UAV programs, and an alleged top-secret successor already under development. 26. Graham set up the last-mentioned one was only a sales pitch, not a fact. At the time in the 1990s, the USAF may have seen the SR-71 as a bargaining chip to ensure the survival of other priorities. Also, the SR-71 program's product, which was operational and strategic intelligence, was not seen by these generals as being very valuable to the USAF. The primary consumers of this intelligence were the CIA, NSA, and DIA. A general misunderstanding of the nature of aerial reconnaissance and a lack of knowledge about the SR-71 in particular, due to its secretive development and operations, was used by detractors to discredit the aircraft, with the assurance given that a